Hello everyone, I'm Professor Lee of Dr. Herbal Medicine TV. Today is the second special lecture on anti-aging treatment. Since the new field of anti-aging treatment requires a comprehensive understanding of what, why, and how it is treated, we'll start the overview until today. After that, we'll explain each anti-aging treatment method in detail. If you receive a medical certificate from the hospital for submission to the insurance company, there will be an English code next to the diagnosis. It's a code that classifies disease and health conditions that are standardized worldwide. This was created by the World Health Organization to manage disease information with common standards worldwide. It's revised periodically every few years, and the most recent edition is the 11th edition, revised in 2018, and there are 55,000 types of disease. Compared to the 14,000 diseases in the 10th edition, the number of diseases has really increased, right? One of the features of the latest edition, the 11th edition, is that it emphasized the concept of recognizing aging as a disease for the first time. Although aging is not yet classified as a disease, aging-related frailty is the given separate code and is recognized as an important health issue. Still, many people think of aging as a natural biological process. Although aging is generally still accepted as a natural process, recent life science and medicine have proposed a new perspective that aging can be treated and managed like a disease. Why is that? First, there is growing evidence that aging is a pathological process that leads to many of the diseases we currently treat. Aging is not simply a natural phenomenon caused by the flow of time. Various diseases that we know occur as a result of accumulation of the other pathological process, such as the accumulation of DNA damage, impaired ability to recycle damaged cell, increased inflammation, and impaired communication signals between cells. In fact, aging is closely related to cancer, cardiovascular disease, and neurodegenerative disease such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. Second, numerous cell and animal experiments have shown that inducing the aging process accelerates aging and shortens lifespan. Conversely, it has been continuously confirmed that regulating this cellular aging process reverses aging and extends lifespan. Third, although it's still in the early stages, clinical studies have shown that by controlling the characteristics of aging through therapeutic intervention, the onset of disease can be delayed or the aged body function can be improved. And based on the scientific evidence to date, it's clear that aging treatment is an innovative medical paradigm that, although it's not yet known to be extending lifespan, but extend the healthy lifespan, allows for an active and happy life for a long time and improve the quality of life. In the early 1900s, the average life expectancy of humans worldwide was about 30 to 40 years, and only about 100 years ago, it was only about 50 years. With this average life expectancy, there was no need to worry about the accumulation of senescent cells, but now the average life expectancy worldwide is about 72 years, and in some countries, it's over 80 years. Since the average life expectancy has increased by more than 30 years, senescent cells have also been accumulating for 30 years. Should we just leave these senescent cells alone? The reasons for this increase in life expectancy are prevention of infectious disease, improvement of public health 10 to 15 years, medical technology, cardiovascular disease, early diagnosis and treatment of cancer 5 to 10 years, stable food supply due to agricultural revolution, improvement of nutrition 4 to 7 years, improvement of lifestyle, socioeconomic growth 5 to 10 years. However, life expectancy has increased too quickly for humans to adapt. As a result, they have not evolved enough to deal with the increasing accumulation of senescent cells, so aging will continue to become a major social problem worldwide. So what should we do? The average life expectancy has doubled in the past 100 years due to improvement in living environment and development of health policies and medical technology. So, wouldn't it be better to improve our living habits, expand the living environment, and anti-aging policies, and apply new research results from now on to live while coping with aging? Over the past decade, hundreds of thousands of research papers on aging have been published, and the number has been increasing at a surprising rate each year, especially since 2020. Positive research results continue to grow on the possibility that various therapeutic interventions can delay, stop, or reverse many of the aging processes that are previously considered inevitable physiologic phenomenon. Today, I'd like to help you gain insight into aging as a whole by reconstructing the essence of aging that has been discovered over the past 10 years into 12 major topics. From now on, I'll briefly explain the 12 types of cellular aging one by one. Let's get started. 1. Accumulation of damaged DNA and genomic instability. Did you know that DNA damage occurs more than 100,000 times per day in each cell of our body? As you can see, free radicals, environmental toxic metabolite, chemicals, ultraviolet rays, heavy metals, and radiation constantly damage the DNA structure around DNA. Since damaged DNA cannot be left as is, it's repaired immediately, and up to 99.9% is repaired until the 20s. However, when you reach middle age, the repairability decreases 5-fold, and in old age, it decreases more than 10-fold. As a result, DNA that has not been repaired gradually accumulates. If damaged DNA is left as it is, it will become cancer cells. So our body's survival mechanism works to stop cell growth and turn it into senescent cells. As a result, senescent cells accumulate and age, but it is the result of survival defense mechanisms that has chosen not to turn into cancer cells. At this time, the latest perspective in modern aging biology is that if DNA damage is prevented as much as possible, and the repair system is operated well, aging can be slowed down and related disease can be improved. So, can DNA damage be minimized as much as possible? Of course. There are ways to minimize DNA damage as much as possible, and there are also ways to strengthen the ability to repair damage. 2. Shortening and damage of telomeres. Not only humans, but all multicellular organisms with DNA that needs to be protected have telomeres, which are DNA protection devices. Except for stem cell and germ cells, the somatic cells that make up our body's organs have telomeres that continue to shorten with each division, and when they reach their limit in old age, the cells stop dividing and stop growing, turning into senescent cells. Aside from the problem that telomere gets shorter as we age, telomeres are also very vulnerable to damage. Damage begins especially in our 40s, and when it becomes severe, cells stop growing and become senescent prematurely, even though their length has not shortened. So, if you keep our telomeres longer or less damaged, will you live longer and healthier lives? This is an important question that many scientists are currently studying, and research continues to report that protecting and maintaining telomeres is an important factor in living a healthy life and can actually have a positive effect on the aging processes. The enzyme that restores shortened telomere is telomerase. When telomerase is activated, telomere loss is restored. This prevents cell aging and often the possibility of slowing down the aging processes in humans. And among the herbs and health supplement pills that we can currently use, there are natural products that have been proven to have the function of a telomerase activator. 3. Accumulation of senescent cells and zombie cells. If DNA damage and telomere management are done well, the accumulation of senescent cells is likely to be reduced, but it cannot be completely prevented, so senescent cells gradually accumulate. When senescent cells accumulate, they secrete inflammatory substances and develop the characteristic of causing surrounding cells to become senescent. In fact, a 2021 study confirmed the domino effect in which senescent cells damage surrounding tissue with their own secretions, which is why senescent cells were nicknamed zombie cells. Even at this very moment, when we do not notice, zombie cells that spread chronic inflammation in our body are spreading aging and accelerating aging. For this reason, the technical term inflammaging was also created. There is increasing evidence that senescent cells are an important cause of accelerating aging and the occurrence of various diseases, and there is a high possibility that removing senescent cells will improve aging and the existing disease condition. Drugs or natural products that remove senescent cells are called senolytics, and due to the tremendous pace of progress in related research, they are expected to be the strong candidate that can be prescribed first as anti-aging treatment in clinics. Let me ask you a question. If aging is the only cause of senescent cell accumulation, there is no cure, right? However, since it is caused by many other causes besides aging, it is possible to reduce its occurrence, and there are also senescent cell removal agents, so cell aging can be reversed. 4. Decrease autophagy ability. 2. Recycle intracellular waste product. Autophagy is a Greek word combining self-auto and eat phagy. Autophagy is one of the evolutionarily conserved survival mechanisms that has existed from the early stage of life on planet Earth to modern humans. This is because cells evolved to recycle their own component to survive stress situations. In mammals, especially human cells, autophagy is activated in various stress situations such as energy shortage, oxidative stress, and infection. Cells must constantly adapt to environmental changes in order to survive, and autophagy plays a key role in helping this adaptation process. Studies have shown that by removing damaged protein or damaged organelles, cells increase their survival and help them adapt to stress. When autophagy functions normally, damaged protein in cells are removed and recycled to create new ones, maintaining healthy cell function. On the other hand, when autophagy decreases, aging accelerates and the risk of cancer, neurodegenerative disease, and cardiovascular disease increases. When autophagy function is defective, cells quickly turn into senescent cells regardless of telomere shortening. In particular, if damaged mitochondria cannot be quickly processed by autophagy, senescent cells increase. In animal experiment, if autophagy function is impaired, treatment with a strong anti-aging effect such as calorie restriction does not extend lifespan. In clinical studies, when autophagy ability is enhanced, the function of each organ is improved. The main mechanism of action of longevity pills, which have a similar effect to calorie restriction, which is recognized as the most certain lifespan extender in mammals, is also the autophagy enhancement effect, and they are the first candidate to be applied clinically along with senescent cell removal pills. 5. Epigenetic gene activity changes. The DNA double helix you see now has countless bead-like decoration attached to it. They weren't there when we were born, but they are traces that have formed after adapting to various environments for decades. In places where traces are attached to DNA like this, the genes we inherited from our parents haven't changed, but their activity has changed to become weaker or stronger than before. This is called epigenetic change. The Greek word for the English word epigenetics comes from the word epi, which means over or overlapping, and genetics, which means gene or related to heredity. In other words, epigenetic means something molecular superimposed on the top of the gene, while the gene remains intact. It's like a decoration added to the gene that controls the function of the gene, and depending on how the decoration is superimposed, the original function of the gene becomes stronger or weaker. If another molecule is attached to the longevity gene will be suppressed and aging will accelerate, right? If another molecule is attached to the gene that makes the substances that prevent inflammation, chronic inflammation will occur. And if the cancer suppressor gene is suppressed, cancer will occur. Such changes occur in everyone, although the degree is different. It is clinically continuously confirmed that if we can eliminate or control the epigenetic changes that cause such bad results, we can delay aging and improve aging-related disease. There is even the possibility that we can slow down or reverse aging and treat disease by controlling epigenetic changes and reversing or resetting them, called epigenetic cell reprogramming. 6. Mitochondrial dysfunction. There are two types of external bacteria, not human cells, living together in symbiosis in our bodies. Both of them play an essential role in maintaining our health, and both of them are included in the 12 major topics of aging treatment. One is the intestinal bacteria that you are familiar with, and the other is mitochondria, which originate from alpha proteobacteria, a type of prokaryotic organism. Intestinal bacteria are made of various types of bacteria, and most of them live together in the intestines, but mitochondria live in symbiosis with our cells in all cells of our bodies except red blood cells. More than 9% of plants on Earth also live in symbiosis with fungi, so it is not at all strange that we live in symbiosis with these bacteria. This symbiotic relationship between our cells and mitochondria is not a simple symbiotic relationship. They are a great symbiotic relationship in which they die together and live together. Only by understanding this close symbiotic relationship can we correctly set the direction of anti-aging treatment focused on mitochondria. If the cell is healthy, the mitochondria are also healthy. However, if the cell becomes sick and aged, the mitochondria also become sick and aged, accelerating each other's disease and aging. Mitochondrial dysfunction is one of the main factors that promotes cellular senescence. If there is a problem with mitochondria, it affects the energy metabolism, oxidative stress control, and signal transmission within the cell, causing the cell to age and causing aging-related disease. 7. NAD, which decreases rapidly with age. NAD is a coenzyme that is created and functions in the body, and it accepts and transfers electrons. Almost all metabolic processes in our body require energy. This is because when there is energy, something new is created at each step, and the next step reaction proceeds. This energy uses the energy generated from moving electrons. Electrical energy, which is essential in human daily life, is also generated from moving electrons. The source of the energy that electrons on Earth have is solar energy. In order to move electrons containing solar energy, there must be a carrier, and the most representative carrier is NAD. NAD, which is always ready to accept and transfer electrons, is a substance necessary for about 400 to 500 biochemical reactions in cells. Excluding water, which acts as a reactant or product of numerous chemical reactions, and ATP, which is essential for almost all cellular functions, NAD is probably involved in the next largest number of reactions. However, NAD decreases significantly with age. It decreases in blood cells and in cells of all organs, including the skin, brain, heart, and liver. It's a common phenomenon in worms, flies, mouse, and humans, and it seems to be characteristic of aging that has been preserved across species. NAD was first discovered in 1906, over 100 years ago. NAD, which had not received much attention for over 100 years since its discovery, began to receive attention in the early 2000s, when it was discovered to be essential substances for the function of the longevity gene sortrin. Aging and NAD deficiency are very closely related. In aging cells, the activity of the enzyme that recycle NAD decreases, so naturally NAD also decreases. Even though the level is reduced, consumption increases further. This is because as cells age, they have more work to do to repair damaged DNA, and NAD is also needed in this process. 8. Stem cell depletion. Everyone says when they get older, their body doesn't feel like it used to. Of course, I do too. I definitely feel like my function has declined now, or my regenerative ability is definitely different from when I was young. When we look at the cells in our body as a whole, hundreds of millions of cells die every minute, and the same number of new cells are created. The appearance of senescent cells that begin to appear during this process is a sacrificial self-defense mechanism of the cell to prevent them from turning into cancer cells. However, if they are not replaced by new cells and accumulated, aging is accelerated, and stem cell depletion is at the center of this. The fact that new cells are not refreshed and the regenerative ability is reduced is the biggest characteristic of aging, and this is because the number and function of stem cells responsible for regeneration and repair have decreased. If there are some of you do not feel much of a decline in function even as you get older, it's because the adult stem cells remaining in your body have not aged much. Like other cells in the aging process, adult stem cells also accumulate damage over time, reducing their number and function. For example, in people over 70 years of age, skin and liver adult stem cells are usually reduced less than 50%, and neural adult stem cells are usually less than 30%. Adult stem cells that are initially active also become weaker with age, gradually losing their power as if a battery is discharged. This is called aging due to stem cell depletion. 9. Immunosenescence. Among the causes of illness after middle age, the most important cause of shortening lifespan is infectious disease. In fact, more than 90% of people who die from infectious disease are elderly people over the age of 60. More precisely, they are people whose immune function has aged among the elderly over the age of 60. Immunosenescence refers to a process in which the immune system gradually weakens and changes abnormally as we age. Immunosenescence is not simply a process that comes naturally with age. It's the result of the accumulation of small damage we experience every day. As immunosenescence progresses, the effectiveness of vaccine decreases, and even common infection can lead to fatal diseases. The high mortality rate among the elderly during the COVID-19 pandemic is a representative example of this. In addition, aged immune cells cannot effectively remove cancer stem cells, so the risk of cancer development also increases. When immunosenescence occurs, first you become more susceptible to infectious diseases, and your ability to remove cancer cells decreases, so you become more susceptible to cancer. Second, your ability to properly suppress and control excessively increased immune response also decreases, so chronic inflammation increases. As inflammation increases, you become more susceptible to cardiovascular disease, neurodegenerative disease, autoimmune disease, and metabolic disease. Third, it's important to note that immunosenescence does not stop at simply a decrease in immune function. Immunosenescence is accompanied by metabolic abnormalities such as mitochondrial dysfunction, increased reactive oxygen species, and abnormal glucose metabolism. Aged immune cells also decrease basic nutrient metabolism functions and cause inflammation, accelerating immune aging. First, they also contribute to accelerating the aging of cells other than immune cells. For example, aged and hypersensitive immune cells deplete adult stem cells. 10. Disruption of intercellular communication. Humans are multicellular organisms. Therefore, each cell must cooperate through continuous conversation, not simply doing its own work. This conversation is intercellular communication, an essential mechanism that coordinates the function of the tissue and organs. However, this important system becomes distorted as we age, accelerating aging and causing many other chronic diseases. Inflammatory aging is also a representative phenomenon that occurs when intercellular communication is not regulated. In fact, disruption of intercellular communication is a very important characteristic that defines aging. Intercellular communication maintains homeostasis in the body by coordinating the nervous, immune, hormonal, blood flow, and metabolic systems. But what happens when this communication is broken? The immune response becomes excessive or metabolism does not occur properly, which can lead to disease such as obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. As mentioned in the stem cell section, even as we age, there are adult stem cells in each organ, which supply new cells when they need to be active. This is also created by intercellular communication, which causes stem cells that are normally dormant to become active again. Intercellular communication acts as a network that connects our bodies as a team. Our ecosystem on Earth and human life are not deteriorating unless the network is healthy. We can only stay healthy when the network between cells in our body works well. Transfusing serum from old mice into young mice can cause dramatic changes in the young mice, starting them to age within a few days. 2023 study found that young mice that received blood from old mice had a dramatic increase in neurological inflammation and a decrease in neural network formation. Conversely, diluting the blood of old mice results in a rejuvenating effect, including the activation of muscle regeneration and liver tissue repair. This strongly suggests that there are substances circulating in the blood that promote aging. The younger and healthier you are, the more anti-aging factors you have in your blood, and the older you get, the more aging factors you have. When the balance between these two factors is broken, and the communication signals made by the aging factors become dominant, they transmit aging signals to surrounding cells, thereby propagating aging and thus accelerating aging. 11. Gut microbiome dysbiosis. Microorganisms make up the largest portion of all life on Earth, and they share genetic information with each other, respond to the environment, and coexist with humans to this day. Microorganisms are also the most numerous in our bodies, and in particular, over 2,000 species of microorganisms, numbering over 100 trillion, coexist with humans and survive in our intestines. Over the past 200 years, the Earth's ecosystem has been seriously damaged. Due to the selfish and reckless action of humans, the Earth, which has evolved to support various life forms for billions of years, is rapidly changing its environment and destroying its ecosystem. If the balance of microorganisms on Earth is disrupted, a disaster could occur where plants and animals will have difficulty surviving. From the perspective of intestinal microorganisms, the intestinal ecosystem has been rapidly changing due to changes in modern eating habits, such as the increased use of processed food and antibiotics over the past 100 years. If the balance of microorganisms in our body is disrupted by bad lifestyle habits and antibiotic overuse that damage the healthy diversity of intestinal microorganisms, we will age faster and become sick, making it even more difficult to live in the worsening global environment. We must never forget the intestinal microorganisms that live and evolve with us in our bodies. The most important thing in gut microbiome imbalance is the decrease in gut microbiome diversity. The decrease in the types of gut bacteria is similar to the extinction of some life forms as the Earth's environment changes. The effect of improving gut microbiome imbalance on dozens of disease and health problems confirmed in clinical studies is truly amazing. Recently, more and more studies have proven that gut microbiome imbalance is closely related to chronic disease related to aging. This means that gut microbiome acts as a major regulator of the aging process. It can be seen that centenarians, unlike the general elderly aged 70 to 90, maintain a healthier gut microbiome ecosystem with an increase in beneficial bacteria. The fact that gut microbiome changes of elderly aged with frailty are clearly different from those of elderly with longevity means that aging can be prevented and treated by regulating the gut microbiome. Regardless of intestinal microbe, if only the intestinal cells age, the mucosa is damaged and intestinal mucosa becomes an inflammatory environment. Intestinal microbe exposed to an inflammatory environment naturally have reduced diversity, resulting in an imbalance of intestinal microbe, which in turn accelerates the aging of aged intestinal cells. Ultimately, the vicious cycle of aging and intestinal microbe is repeated, leading to aging and disease of the entire body. Recent research results also strongly suggest that restoring a healthy intestinal microbe ecosystem can help with a healthy lifespan and longevity. Now, finally, the 12.1, the brain that shines when stimulated, the expansion of positive plasticity of the brain. Perhaps all the subscribers who are watching the anti-aging treatment lecture right now have one thing in common. It's the hope to live a healthy life even as they age. Even if the world becomes more difficult to live in than it is now, it's still a world worth living in as long as you don't get sick. Therefore, just living healthy without getting sick for a long time is a reason to study new longevity method, but more importantly, the reason I have to live a long and healthy life, the fundamental reason to study new things about aging and practice what I've learned in a new way is the goal of life. And the place that creates the goal of life is the brain. A brain with a goal constantly reorganizes the connection between neurons, and this brain characteristic is called brain plasticity. A brain with a goal does not age over time or with age, but rather it becomes stronger and more stable, maintains positive brain plasticity, and plays the role of control tower while overcoming difficulties. Maintaining positive brain plasticity is the key factor in slowing down brain aging. Among the organs in our body, the brain is a very precious organ. Even if the number of brain neurons decreases with age, it's the organ that increases neural network more abundantly than when it was young because of its special characteristic called plasticity. Recent studies have revealed that decrease in connection between neurons, rather than the loss of neurons themselves, is an important aging phenomenon that reduces brain function. The brain is an organ that grows by stimuli that change the brain for the better enter the brain through visual, auditory, and somatosensory nerve pathways, and the brain processes this and has the power to change until death. And since this ability is something that everyone has equally, whether I live with a healthy brain or not is not determined by the conditions such as academic background or economic power, but by whether I live with my own goals. I'll conclude my 12-topic lecture on the characteristic of aging that have been intensively investigated recently, reorganized based on my clinical experience. Thank you for your hard work in studying for a long time. Now, after the overview of aging, next week we will be going over specific longevity method. For each of the 12 types of cellular aging, we'll study various lifestyle habits, food, herbs, health supplement, and pills that can delay or treat them as much as possible. Since this is a lecture of the result of aging research over the past 12 years, there will naturally be a lot of unfamiliar and specialized terms, so I will try to explain it as easily as possible and explain it repeatedly. See you next week.